This thrilling story begins by showing an abandoned place, where a masked man is seen moving forward in great agony. He is so badly injured that he can barely walk, and it seems he might die. Just then, someone appears in front of him and says, "Drink this." What was that thing? It wasn't shown to us. But after consuming it, the masked man begins to hear voices. These voices tell him that whenever a person dies, they see flashbacks of their entire past. And now, the same thing is happening to the masked man. Inside his eyes, we see all the visions related to his life. This takes us back to the time when the masked man was a child. His name was Matthew, and he used to live with his father. Matthew seemed physically weaker than the other kids, which is why some bullies would constantly trouble him. Matthew would get beaten up but never speak out against it. Now Matthew reaches home where his father is present. His father used to be a good boxer a long time ago. But after the death of Matthew's mother, he completely broke down. He started consuming alcohol, which ruined his career. However, Matthew's father never wanted Matthew to end up like him. He had a dream that his son would study well and become a doctor or a lawyer. He used to teach Matthew good things and tried to guide him toward a bright future. But Matthew was angry with his father because he used to be involved in illegal activities. He was often seen working with a gangster named Phelan on shady dealings, and Matthew kept asking him to stop. His father even promised to give it all up. The next day, when Matthew scored good marks, he excitedly took his report card to show his father. But on the way, he saw his father beating someone up. This meant he was still working with Phelan's gang. Matthew was shocked to see this and ran away angrily. While running, Matthew passed by a factory where some strange chemicals were being delivered. Suddenly, he ran near a crane, and the driver, while trying to save Matthew, collided with a container of chemicals. Huge chemical cans broke open, and the liquid spilled all over Matthew. A large amount of that chemical got into Matthew's eyes, permanently damaging them. Matthew was now completely blind. When Matthew's father found out what had happened, he apologized to his son. He promised to quit all illegal work, start training for boxing again, and become a good player. Matthew forgave him after hearing this. From the very next day, Matthew's father resumed boxing practice, and Matthew was present at every training session. Even though Matthew could no longer see, his future, which once seemed ruined, began to change in unexpected ways. Over time, he started noticing that he could hear a wide range of sounds with incredible clarity. Every part of his body had become extremely agile. In fact, he could react to even the smallest and the biggest sounds. Though he was blind, he could sense everything around him with his heightened senses. He always knew exactly where someone was, with such accuracy that he was never wrong. His body had become so swift that he could jump across large containers and buildings. In a way, it could be said that Matthew had developed multiple powers. Perhaps it was the effect of the chemical that took away his eyesight but granted him extraordinary abilities. When the same group of bullies came to harass him again, Matthew fought back fiercely and taught them a lesson without seriously harming them. He kept enhancing himself and eventually was able to sense his surroundings with great ease. His father, too, was working hard and had now prepared for a boxing match. While getting ready in the dressing room, he was approached by Phelan. Phelan told Matthew's father that he would have to lose the match. However, Matthew's father was completely against this idea. He wanted to move forward for the sake of his son. Phelan tried to tempt him by saying that if he lost the match, he would get a lot of money, which could help secure his son's future. For a moment, Matthew's father was left thinking. As the match began, he and his opponent entered the ring and started fighting. From the very start, Matthew's father was getting beaten badly. Matthew, who was present there, kept cheering him on. Despite taking heavy hits, Matthew's father grew weaker. But Matthew didn't stop cheering him. Motivated by this, Matthew's father got angry and launched a fierce attack on his opponent. In a short time, he knocked him out. This enraged Phelan, who stormed out of the arena. While Matthew waited outside for his father, he suddenly heard someone screaming. It was none other than his father, who had been brutally attacked by Phelan's men. It was obvious, they had done this because he didn't follow their orders. By the time Matthew reached him, his father had already died. Matthew broke down in tears, unable to identify the killer. But he made up his mind, he would find the people responsible and help others in need. Years passed. Matthew had grown up and had even become a successful lawyer. But he still hadn't discovered the identity of his father's killers. One day, a case landed on his desk involving a bartender who had been brutally raped. He had gathered a lot of money and many witnesses to prove that he was innocent. Because of the fake evidence presented before the judge, the accused was let go. But Matthew was actually glad, because where the court had failed to deliver justice, he would now do it himself. We then see Matthew wearing a unique costume, heading out to punish the criminal. It was an unusual outfit, similar to what superheroes wear. The rapist who had assaulted the bartender was attending a party. Wearing a mask, Matthew entered the party and slowly made his way inside. Within moments, he launched an attack. The gangsters at the party fought back, but although Matthew was blind, he could sense everything, where people were, when someone was going to strike. Using his heightened senses, he accurately predicted every move and brutally took down his enemies. However, the main criminal managed to escape. Matthew chased him all the way to a nearby metro station and tried to capture him. Just then, a train roared past, and the loud noise threw off Matthew's senses. The criminal took advantage of the distraction, pulled out a gun, and aimed it at him. The truth was, despite all his powers, Matthew had one weakness: he couldn't function well in overwhelming noise. As soon as the train passed, Matthew reacted quickly, knocked the gun away, and pushed the criminal onto the tracks. Within moments, another train came and ran over him. In a way, Matthew had delivered justice for the murdered girl. The police soon began investigating the case. When they reached the spot where the criminal had died, they immediately suspected that it was the work of someone known as Daredevil. The city already had whispers of a man by that name, and it was none other than Matthew. Whenever Daredevil delivered his version of justice, he left his symbol on the ground. But the police now considered Daredevil a criminal and were determined to catch him. After finishing his mission, Matthew went straight to a church. There, he told the priest that he wanted to repent for his sins. He confessed that even though he fought for justice, he had to walk a dark path to achieve it. The priest was shocked. Matthew wasn't just a lawyer, he had also served as a judge. He had always fought for justice through legal means, but now things had changed. The next day, Matthew was seen sitting at a restaurant, chatting with his friend. They were very close and shared everything with each other. Suddenly, a woman named Electra entered the restaurant. Matthew sensed her presence instantly and somehow knew how beautiful she must be. Intrigued, he deliberately approached her to get to know her. But Electra showed no interest in him and walked away. Matthew, however, may have already fallen for her. He secretly followed her to her apartment, something Electra eventually realized. At first, she assumed Matthew was some kind of creep. But Matthew explained that he was blind and only wanted to know more about her. Just as Electra was about to leave, Matthew held her hand. A small fight also broke out between the two of them. During that moment, Matthew realized that Electra possessed some seriously impressive fighting skills. However, he didn't hold back either. He demonstrated his own skills, which naturally impressed Electra. Eventually, she introduced herself and asked Matthew, "How are you able to do all this? You're blind, you can't see anything. Yet you can sense your opponent's movement so accurately. How is that possible?" Matthew explained that he belonged to a place where he was trained in these abilities. Electra, in return, shared that she had learned her fighting techniques from her father, who was once a great fighter himself. Through this exchange, Matthew and Electra grew closer and soon became good friends. They began to share everything with each other. Meanwhile, we are shown Electra's father, a powerful businessman engaged in some high-level dealings. One of the people he was negotiating with was a man named Wilson. It was revealed that Wilson was actually the man for whom Phelan and the others used to work. He was also the one who had ordered Matthew's father to lose a match years ago, and had him killed when he refused. Wilson was running several illegal industries and had long been under police surveillance. Electra's father had now learned the truth about Wilson and wanted no part in any illegal dealings. He promptly cancelled all contracts with Wilson. Enraged, Wilson left the meeting, clearly intending to retaliate. It seemed likely he would attempt to harm Electra's father in revenge. We then see Matthew walking at night with Electra. The understanding between them had deepened, and they had become very close. Matthew took Electra to one of his favorite spots, a quiet place with a beautiful view of the moon. Electra was impressed and opened up to him further. In that emotional moment, they began to grow even closer. Electra said she should leave, but Matthew stopped her, saying, "It's going to rain soon." And sure enough, it began to rain. Standing in the rain, the two of them grew intimate and shared a kiss. It was the beginning of their romantic relationship. Next, we see a grand party organized by Electra's father, where Matthew had also been invited. Upon arriving, Matthew noticed that Wilson and his associates were also present. As a lawyer, Matthew already knew that Wilson was not a clean businessman. In fact, Wilson had established several illegal businesses under various fronts. But Matthew still didn't know that it was under Wilson's command that his father had been killed. When he eventually finds out, what he'll do to Wilson will be something truly exciting to watch. At the party, Matthew went to Electra and began dancing with her happily. Electra's father was delighted to see his daughter smiling and enjoying herself. But then, Wilson appeared behind Electra's father. He told him, "Not making a deal with me was the biggest mistake of your life, and now your entire family will have to pay the price." Wilson then pulled out a rose from Electra's father's pocket, a symbolic warning. Electra's father panicked and, for security reasons, decided to leave the party. Electra also sensed that something was wrong, so she left Matthew and quickly went to her father. The two of them got into a car, and Electra kept asking him what had just happened. Her father didn't reveal everything, but he did say, "Our lives are in danger now." Matthew, too, could tell that something bad was about to happen. That's why he rushed to help Electra. From above, we see Daredevil appear, obviously, Matthew in disguise. Then, we're introduced to a man who worked for Wilson. He was a contract killer, known for never missing his target. His name was Bullseye. Wilson had hired Bullseye to assassinate Electra's father. Bullseye took out his sharp blades and launched them directly at the car Electra and her father were in. The blade struck the driver and bodyguard, causing the car to crash. Just as Bullseye was about to kill Electra's father, Daredevil arrived at the scene. Seeing him, Bullseye threw more blades, but Daredevil was already anticipating it. He dodged them easily, surprising Bullseye, because no one had ever escaped his aim before. A fierce fight broke out between Bullseye and Daredevil. Bullseye was stunned. After so many years, he had finally found a worthy opponent. Daredevil was matching him blow for blow. In terms of combat skills, they were on the same level. But suddenly, Bullseye managed to steal a weapon from Daredevil's pocket and hurled it straight at Electra's father. Daredevil tried his best to block it, but a sudden explosion threw him back. The sharp weapon hit Electra's father directly, killing him on the spot. When Electra came out and saw her father lying there dead, she broke down in tears. As she pulled the weapon from his body, she began to suspect that it was Daredevil who had done this. In her rage and confusion, she opened fire on Daredevil. He couldn't explain himself at that moment and fled the scene. The next day, many people gathered for Electra's father's funeral. Matthew was also there, trying to console her. But inside Electra, a fire of vengeance had already been lit. She was determined to avenge her father's death, by killing Daredevil. Matthew tried to explain to her that revenge wasn't the answer, but Electra wouldn't listen. She swore she wouldn't rest until she had taken her revenge on Daredevil. Matthew didn't know what to do anymore. He was caught between everything, his identity, his guilt, and the people he cared about. After finishing his tasks for the day, he headed back home. But on the way, he caught a suspicious investigative reporter red-handed. When he questioned him, Matthew found out that the reporter had figured out the truth. Matthew was Daredevil. But instead of exposing him, the reporter had come to ask for his help. The reason? The reporter had seen a unique weapon with Matthew, the same kind of weapon that Daredevil was known to use. That had confirmed his suspicion. Sitting down calmly with the reporter, Matthew listened as he revealed some shocking information. It was Wilson, the dangerous businessman, who had ordered the assassination of Electra's father. Apparently, Wilson followed a pattern. Once he targeted someone, he wouldn't stop until their entire family was destroyed. That meant Electra's life was now in danger. Realizing this, Matthew took the reporter's warning seriously and rushed to save Electra. Meanwhile, the assassin Bullseye was also on his way, searching for her. Just as Matthew reached the base of Electra's apartment building, someone attacked him. It was Electra herself, who still believed Daredevil had murdered her father. Matthew didn't fight back, but Electra, blinded by rage, struck him hard with her sharp weapon. In the struggle, she pulled off Daredevil's mask, and was stunned to discover that it was Matthew. The shock hit her deeply. There was no way Matthew could have done this. Her doubt was finally confirmed. It had all been a terrible misunderstanding. Had she not discovered the truth in time, she might have killed the one person who cared most for her. At that very moment, Bullseye arrived. Electra now understood that it wasn't Daredevil who had murdered her father, it was Bullseye. But Matthew was already badly injured and in no condition to fight. So Electra stepped forward alone to face Bullseye. Despite her impressive combat skills, Bullseye was stronger and more brutal. He overpowered her and, in a devastating blow, drove her own weapon into her body. Electra was left gravely wounded. She couldn't even stand. Moments later, police officers arrived on the scene. Bullseye, fearing capture, fled immediately. Electra collapsed near Matthew, and as he tried desperately to save her, it was already too late. She had died in his arms. With the police now closing in, Daredevil had no choice but to flee the scene. But he was crushed. He hadn't just lost a battle, he had lost the woman he loved. Broken and defeated, Daredevil made his way to the church, collapsing inside. He began calling out for the father, needing answers, needing peace, and maybe, forgiveness. The father quickly arrived at the church and was shocked to see Daredevil in such a terrible condition. Daredevil pleaded for help, and the father gave him a strange liquid to drink, something mysterious, never fully explained. This moment, in fact, brought us back to the very opening scene of the story. Soon after, Bullseye also arrived at the church. He was determined to kill Daredevil, unable to accept that someone more powerful than him existed in the city. Matthew immediately told the father to find a safe place and alert the police. The father escaped to safety, and now, the real fight was about to begin. On one side was Daredevil, severely injured. On the other, Bullseye, full of rage and energy. Both used their weapons, causing destruction throughout the church. Somehow, Matthew's strength had returned, and he was fighting with twice the power. From the beginning, he delivered heavy damage to Bullseye, dodging and countering every attack with precision. It started to look like Daredevil might actually defeat him. But in the midst of the battle, Bullseye realized something. Loud sounds severely weakened Daredevil. So he began deliberately creating loud noises to throw Matthew off balance. Daredevil, overwhelmed, kept covering his ears in pain. Bullseye took full advantage, landing brutal hits and weakening him even more. Eventually, Daredevil collapsed on a raised platform, completely worn out. Bullseye approached and, while taunting him, revealed that Wilson had warned him this wouldn't be an easy kill, but now he had found Daredevil's weakness. "No one's coming to save you," Bullseye sneered. He also bragged that Wilson was behind numerous murders, including the death of a great fighter who once refused to obey him. The only person Wilson hadn't managed to kill yet was that fighter's blind son. Hearing this, Daredevil realized with certainty that they had been talking about him, and that Wilson had indeed been behind his father's murder. Rage surged through him. Drawing on every last bit of strength, Daredevil fought back with renewed force. Just then, he sensed that police officers had fired a bullet. He dodged it at the last second, and it struck Bullseye's hand instead, the same hand he used to attack. With Bullseye's main weapon now useless, Daredevil seized the moment and knocked him from the platform. Bullseye fell straight onto a police car below. Though still alive, he was badly injured, and the officers arrested him immediately. Now Daredevil set out for the final confrontation, with Wilson. The man who had caused so much pain was finally within reach. Wilson, powerful and physically imposing, stood before him. But once the fight began, Daredevil easily overpowered him. It became clear that sheer size meant nothing without skill and speed, both of which Matthew possessed in abundance. Even after inflicting significant damage, Daredevil chose not to kill Wilson. Instead, he handed him over to the police, letting justice take its proper course. Wilson now began threatening Daredevil, saying, "I'll expose your true identity to everyone." But Matthew calmly replied, "And who will believe you? That a blind lawyer is the masked Daredevil? No one's going to buy that." He knew Wilson's words carried no weight against someone like him. Still, Wilson swore that once he was out of prison, he would take his revenge. Daredevil didn't flinch. He accepted the challenge, telling him, "I'll be waiting." Meanwhile, Bullseye was lying in a hospital bed, every bone in his body broken. But even now, he hadn't lost his edge. When a fly began bothering him, he picked up a syringe and, with perfect precision, hurled it straight into the air, killing the fly in one shot. His aim was still deadly. He had only one goal now, to recover and take revenge on Daredevil. Back in his normal life, Matthew continued to live a double existence. By day, a lawyer fighting for justice in the courtroom, and by night, Daredevil, fighting evil in the shadows. And with that, our story comes to an end.